Hi, so for my presentation, I chose Virgil's biographical sketch. So I'm just gonna kind of jump right in and I'm gonna give you a little introduction about Virgil and his family and where he grew up. So Virgil was born on October 15th, 70 BC in Andes, Italy. At the time, his family is what you would call a peasant family. They grew up on the Italian countryside, and basically all around him is like your basic poetry, like the scenery, the people. It's amazing. When he later grew up, he was educated at Cremona, Milan, and Rome, and this is where he got all his knowledge and training on the Greek and Roman authors and poets that we still know to this day. A lot of his training as well, a lot of it was in rhetoric and philosophy, and I think that was his main influence for his writing later on. So while he was growing up, he had two other brothers. One died during childbirth, and the other one didn't live too long, probably into young adulthood. And from his family and that brother that lived on, we know from them that Virgil was a very agreeable man. He focused a lot on his writing and not a lot on his health or his social life. And he was known to be picky about his food, wine, and the people he would hang around. And they also told us that he was actually homosexual. He wrote about some guy named Alexander, and he had a very close friendship with him. And he used a cover name of Alexis. So that kind of shows how his writing, we can learn a lot from him, even though we may not know the true facts ourselves. So with that, him hiding his beliefs or his insides about that, we know that he was never married, and he didn't play a strong part in military or the political life. He was very closed off unless he was writing. Virgil had written an epic called the Aeneid, which we've talked about in class. If you know anything about Western literature, then you know this book. It had begun being written in around 30 BC, so Virgil was around 40 years old when this had started. As you know, as I said before, Virgil had a very comfortable life. He focused a lot on his book and not a lot on his health, so it showed how devoted he was to writing this and all his works later on. So in his later years, this book was starting to be redefined, and he wanted to get historical research for this book. So Virgil planned to spend 3 years in Greece and Asia revising the sites he had mentioned in his epic. So he got as far as Athens, where he met Augustus, who was returning from the islands, and he persuaded the poet to accompany him to Italy. Virgil was already in declining health, and he passed away not long after in 19 BC on September 21st, and that is close to his 51st birthday. So he got to work on it for a few good years, but it was not enough time for him, sadly. But shortly before he had passed away, Virgil requested that the Aeneid manuscript be destroyed. He did not want to leave it unfinished. He was hoping to finish it before he passed away, but it just didn't happen in time. And Augustus, he knew how Virgil wanted it, and he was going to make sure that it happened. They became very close, and so Augustus wanted to fulfill that last wish of his. So he talked to the empire or the emperor, and the emperor then assigned two of Virgil's friends, Rufus and I believe it's pronounced Tucca. He wanted them to edit the manuscript for publication so that Virgil's wish would be granted. So then he told them not to make any poetic additions. He just wanted them to edit it and finish it. It was finally done around 18 BC, and it was very much accepted in the Mediterranean world as one of the best Roman epics at the time. So after Virgil's death, the Aeneid just magnified his fame. If you didn't know him before, you definitely did now. It was studied in many schools, and numerous biographies were written on the poet and the epic, and it was definitely a sure sign of popular interest among the people. In the 18th century, things started to change. Virgil was very prized, but then later on, towards the end of the century, a new standard was being set. Some of the greatest authors of the era were Keats, Shelley, Byron, Wordsworth, and Coleridge. They kind of redefined writing, and they all had different spirits and attitudes than Virgil. I'm not trying to say Virgil was phased out, but there was definitely different interest among the people, and people still knew of Virgil, but it definitely wasn't the same as before. Lastly, I would just like to talk about Virgil's influence. So, he has been regarded as the Roman's national poet, spokesman, and he has set their ideals and their standards and achievements throughout the centuries. People have said he has reached the ultimate goal of perfection in art and structure and dictation for all poetry and epics and everything to come. He, as I've said, he has become this great man and this great influence, and is being used in school textbooks, our school, and many other schools, and people are writing about him and people wanting to learn more about him. He is recommended by many people, and people just want to know all about him. He's just this great influence and this great writer. He has a lot of knowledge that a lot of us don't have. So kind of back to what I was saying about the 18th century, he still continues to influence people and authors worldwide, and he will be relevant for time to come. He still proves his knowledge to scholars with his amazing work, and he brings in an audience. Actually, I learned that his main audience is actually Christian readers due to his writing of the founding of the Holy City, and people believe this is a prophecy of Christ's coming, and they think that this writer is telling us what we should do and what we should listen to, and it's kind of cool how he has a strong influence on them. Through research and reading, I've learned so much about one author, and I think if we just keep reading and learning more about him, we can learn so much just through one man. In time to come, like, he's going to be known through centuries, and he's going to be influence people for who knows how long, and it's amazing to see.